I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your heart.
So the question of are there bad beings had come up, and I think it's very interesting. And I'm not saying there aren't bad beings. However, there's some things we need to know, I think we need to pay attention to about the nature of human cognition. And one of them is that if you compromise a root element in human cognition, you fuck everything up, and you can't tell you've done this because nobody's looking at the structure of the root elements, which I call holophores. And one of the root elements is the good-evil dichotomy. So if, for example, one thinks that snakes are evil, right? Snakes are bad. Okay, well, I mean, you've just fucked up one of the fundamental symbols in the holophoric lexicon, and at the same time, you've messed up the entire animal kingdom, right? Because now there's a bad thing in the animal kingdom. And there's certain moves you can make in cognition that just make it impossible for you to make a good move in the future, like a move that actually works or is useful or doesn't fuck you up. And one of the problems, we should be really clear about this, I think. My friend was laughing at me because he's like, yeah, you always say that, Darren. Let's get clear about something. But I think we should be really clear about one of the fundamental problems, which is, what was the issue in the Garden of Eden at the tree incident? Presuming that there's some meaningful information we can glean there, okay? And what the issue actually was, according to the shitty translations we have of a book that was probably stolen, was, quote, the knowledge of good and evil. And it might be a problem for humans to think this way, because I think it fucks up something fundamental in the root of mind and identity itself. And so one of the things I suggested to my friend was that they not think in terms of demons or angels, but rather in terms of the presence or absence of good. So that the idea of demons is not actually about entities per se, though it could be. There's different purposes for which we can pursue these questions. But rather, most of the problems in our life, we pose them as the presence of a problem, but they're often the absence of a solution. And humans get very confused between presence and absence. They can think that things that are missing are things. It's sort of the same problem you have with a shadow, right? You're walking down the street, you see your shadow. Is the shadow a thing, or is it the absence of something? And what I was arguing to my friend was that it's particularly because this friend has a problem with thinking about entities that are bad, a lot, too much. I was like, why don't you pose them in your mind not as something that's there, but as something that's missing? Like there's key features of the brightness of being that have gone missing, and that produces the impression of the presence of something, but it's actually the absence. And this is something Toymaker pointed out to me. It's like, yeah, you guys think about, I mean, he didn't say things, but he encouraged me to think about evil not as the presence of something, but as the absence of the intelligence of the divine.
I think that's so beautiful. Can I provide an anecdote that will kind of we can tie
Please.
what you're saying into it? So
Please, yeah.
my friend recently just shared with me that, there's always an interesting moment when you've been friends with someone and it feels like you're like you've had this certain level of relationship, and then you like something happens and you come out to each other and you're like, oh yes, I do believe in all these things that most people don't talk about. Oh yeah, you too? Great. Now we can have more in-depth conversation. And so I had a moment like that with a friend recently, and he shared with me he's had multiple deaths on the property that he lives in. One person was shot, and like, and then another person, actually two people were shot um, around his house. And he says he doesn't know, he didn't like hear this, he wasn't taught this, but he just kind of had this realization of like, oh, like these people need to be told that it's okay, like that they can move on from life. um and he went out there with a candle and would walk around until he found a white owl, and that's how he knew that it was them. And he basically was like, hey, like I know you and I didn't always get along, but like it's okay, like you can go. And the owl flew away, and he said he felt like that was the thing. And I guess it's not super important to figure out like what what that is. Was it actually his friend? Was it his way of grieving? Like, I don't know if through our discussion we can figure out exactly what happened, especially since we weren't there. We're not, but that sort of like the presence of spirits, souls, whatever, um, once they leave their bodies. And then when people talk about demons, which sounds kind of like the absence of something, like not actually some like malicious imp that's invisible and fucking things up, although those could exist. um you know, there's that interplay of like there are shadows that we can assume that are things, and then there's also like beings that are invisible or, you know, on another realm. And I'm curious what you have to say about that.
There's so many interesting features here to me. I've recently been reading, which is kind of weird for me to be reading things, but I'm in the situation I'm in. I've been reading this book called Philosophy and the Evolution of Consciousness, Owen Barfield's Saving the Appearances. This is one of my Saving the Appearances is one of my very favorite books. Just love that thing. It's so brilliantly great. And I definitely encourage you both to read it, and anyone who's listening to read it. But it starts out with, you know, what is the rainbow? And I'm going to go on a bit of I'm going to do a little dissertation here. Feel free to interrupt me, ask questions, slap me around, whatever feels right. But I think one of the most overlooked problems in human cognition orbits one of the 7 question words, which is, I'll just mention the words in case they're not obvious. What, who, why, where, when, which, and how. Okay. Now, this word what is usually the gravestone of intelligence. And we think we're really smart when we figure out what something is. Let's be absolutely clear about this. If you're talking about a fork, it works. It's functional at the level of very simple, pragmatic, like it has a useful scope, like science does. Science has a useful scope. The problem is when we take the principles from the useful scope and we transfer them onto all other phenomena. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen a dust devil?
Are those like little mini tornadoes?
Yep.
Yeah.
You're walking down the street and you see like some leaves and detritus and dirt and stuff, and it's kind of spinning around. And you know that there's a dust devil there. But let me ask you a couple questions. Is it a thing? I mean, is it a thing the way a fork is a thing? What the fuck actually is that? Because it's not there.
It is there. I'm looking at the scientific definition in the Dictionary of Encyclopedias, and then it says that a dust devil is defined by the area of 3 millimeters beyond the perceived dust particle that is on the outmost tornado of the dust devil. That is word for
Yeah,
word. That's
okay.
exactly what it said.
You are dude, you are broken. And you're broken in all the ways that I love best. But your mind is broken because you actually said that you were reading in the Dictionary of Encyclopedias. You actually said that, dude. It's recorded. We can go back and listen. The Dictionary of Encyclopedias. And I just want to emphasize the dick part of that statement.
Yeah, well, you told me that I was allowed to punch you and push you around. So.
That's true. Yeah. Dictionary of Encyclopedias. That's a book that I want. If you find that thing, send me a copy. Right now, bruh. Love it. Yeah. Fantastic. Oh, God.
It's on the way.
So, yeah, like, is there a dust devil? And you can say by extension, well, tornadoes, right? Or whirlpools in water. But what are they? Are they there? I mean, Barfield's much more brilliant. He just goes right to the rainbow. Because think carefully about what is a rainbow.
Sorry for the motor.
By the way, just please be safe, whatever you're doing.
Sitting in a car in a parking lot.
Okay, good. So we transfer this concept of, what is it? Is the word quiddity? Let me look here.
Quiddity.
Yeah. Quiddity. Yeah, we transfer the concept of quiddity from, I'm making some notes here. We transfer that on to phenomena. And we also make another big mistake. And remember the topic here. We're talking about the nature of the idea of whatness in human cognition, in human thinking and speech. So, like, I know, for example, I feel that I know that, I don't know, this 147-pound desk that I'm tapping on right now, bump, 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 bump. It's not going to move. When I go to sleep, it's there. When I wake up, it's there. It's solid. It's continuous. It's always there. I know it's there. It's a desk. I know what it is. When I say this desk, I know what I'm referring to. It's continuous in time and space. Its shape doesn't change. It's concrete. It's relatively concrete. And for that scope, it works. Okay? But we transfer that expectation of static quiddity onto all phenomena in thought. And once you do that, your mind starts attacking its own root because there can't be anything like that. There isn't anything like that. It's impossible, and you're certain that it's true and reliable. You know, there are the Zen koans that I think are really interesting, particularly the one because it has this double valence in this topic of what is the sound of one hand clapping, right? What actually is the sound of one hand attempting to clap against its own fucking absence, right? So there's also the idea that if you were trying to clap with one hand, it would actually make a sound like what, right? So what I'm getting at here, haha, what I'm getting at, hilarious, is what something is when we try to derive identity from phenomena. I think we really get fucked up. Because what happens is we're collapsing the manifold of identity in a way that we're familiar with and we were trained to do it. Everyone around us does it all the time. And wow, it's a huge mistake. Again, totally useful for small pragmatic things. It has a useful scope of application. But like science, when it escapes that useful scope and starts making broad declarations about the nature of reality, or what humans are, or what that girl just did. Imagine that someone commits an action, right? If it's a very simple action, Tina picked up a fork, there's not really any problem. But if the action was relational, there's no chance of you figuring out what Tina did. Forget it. It's not possible. There's just no way it's going to happen.
Well, how does the rainbow exemplify that situation, according to Barfield?
Okay, so let's get some fucking Barfield going on here. Since I've got the book right here, even though it's shredded and thoroughly marked up by someone I never met. I've ordered a new copy, but it just hasn't arrived yet. I'm going to start with the first paragraph. Look at a rainbow. While it lasts, it is, or appears to be, a great arc of many colors occupying a position out there in space. It touches the horizon between that chimney and that tree. A line drawn from the sun behind you and passing through your head would pierce the center of the circle of which it is a part. And now, before it fades, recollect all you have ever been told about the rainbow and its causes, and ask yourself the question, is it really there? You know from memory that if there were a hillside 3 or 4 miles nearer than the present horizon, the rainbow would come to Earth in front of and not behind it. That if you walk to the place where the rainbow ends or seems to end, it would certainly not be there. In a word, reflection will assure you that the rainbow is the outcome of the sun, the raindrops, and your own vision. When I ask of an intangible appearance or representation, is it really there? I usually mean, is it there independently of my vision? Would it be there, for instance, if I shut my eyes, if I move towards or away from it? If this is what you also mean by really there, you will be tempted to add that the raindrops and the sun are really there, but the rainbow is not. Does it follow that as soon as anybody sees a rainbow, there is one? Or, in other words, that there is no difference between an hallucination or a madman's dream of a rainbow, perhaps on a clear day, and an actual rainbow? Certainly not. You were not the only one to see that rainbow. You had a friend with you. I forbear asking if you both saw the same rainbow. Because this is a book about history rather than metaphysics, and these introductory chapters are merely intended to clear away certain misconceptions. Moreover, through the medium of language, you are well aware that thousands of others have seen rainbows in showery weather, but you have never heard of any sane person claiming to have seen one on a sunless or cloudless day. Therefore, if a man tells you he sees a rainbow on a cloudless day, then, even if you are convinced that he means what he says and is not simply lying, you will confidently affirm that the rainbow he sees is not there. Now look at a tree. It is very different from a rainbow. If you approach it, it will still be there. Moreover, in this case, you can do more than look at it. You can hear the noise its leaves make in the wind. You can perhaps smell it. You can certainly touch it. Your senses combine to assure you that it is composed of what is called solid matter. Accord to the tree the same treatment that you accorded to the rainbow. Recollect all you have been told about matter and its ultimate structure, and ask yourself if the tree is really there. I am far from affirming dogmatically that the atoms, electrons, nuclei, etc., of which wood and all matter is said to be composed, are particular and identifiable objects like drops of rain, but if the particles, as I will here call them for convenience, are there, and are all that is there, then, since the particles are no more like the thing I call a tree than the raindrops are like the thing I call a rainbow, it follows, I think, that just as a rainbow is the outcome of the raindrops in my vision, so a tree is the outcome of the particles in my vision and my other sense perceptions. Whatever the particles themselves may be thought to be, the tree as such is a representation. And the difference for me between a tree and a complete hallucination of a tree is the same as the difference between a rainbow and a hallucination of a rainbow. In other words, a tree which is really there is a collective representation. The fact that a dream tree differs in kind from a real tree, and that it is just silly to try and mix them up, is indeed rather literally a matter of common sense. This background of particles is, of course, presumed in the case of raindrops themselves, no less than in that of trees. The relation, raindrops, rainbow, is a picture or analogy, not an instance, of the relation, particles, representation. All right. That's one of the most brilliant things I've ever read in my fucking life, those few sentences. That shit is incredibly powerful. It might as well be that a god just came down from heaven and tapped me on the head and went, hey, buddy, wake the fuck up, bro. Check this out. Think about a rainbow. Think about a tree, right? Because you totally trust that the tree is there. He's telling you it isn't. Is somebody finger drumming?
Yeah, sorry. I was drumming the whole time that you were talking.
All right. So now I want to ask you something. How much less real, and then once again, I want to be really clear, I'm not saying there's no such thing as demons. But where is the demon? Right? Just like where is the rainbow? Where is the angel? Where is the demon? And I think we can point at this where. And it is in the between of existence, awareness, bodies, and thought. That's where it is. But the demon is much less real than the rainbow. And I'm not saying there aren't spirits of the dead. In fact, personally, I'm rather convinced there are. But we should be really careful about how we speak about them and how we think about their quiddity, right? This is super important if we want to be intelligent, if we want to have the opportunity to be intelligent together, or even by ourselves. The humans get really confused about this word what, and they think that things actually are the things that they say they are when they say that is a X. there is no chance that things are that. Even with the fork, right? Even if I'm holding a metal fork in my hand, it fails. The scope of it is useful. We all know what I mean by a fork. I can locate it in space and time. I can weigh it with instruments. I can, X-ray it and do all kinds of crazy things with anything I want that will convince me that on the continuum of existence, the fork is very close to concrete. The rainbow, not so much. The tree, less than a fork, because the interesting qualities of a fork are conceivably limited to 7,000. The interesting qualities of a tree are certainly infinite. The interesting qualities of a rainbow, we can't even begin. We're fucked. Is it even there? We can't tell if it's there. It's not there if I'm not here. So this quiddity question becomes really fundamental to human cognition. What is something? I mean, that's not quiddity. I don't know what it is. It's identity,
Right.
particularly in language and concept.
Well, the rainbow is you, in a certain sense, like a sunset. So the question is, where or what is the sunset? You can understand that question by analogy with the question, what is the rainbow? Because in a certain sense, the sunset is you. So, I mean, does that broach what you mean by identity?
Okay, so this brings up something really trippy. It does, and well done, George, as always. This brings up something really, really trippy, which is where are the things we perceive? Because they are not in the world. There is no me perceiving that can be found in the world. It's some kind of a mirror game, right? Awareness is some kind of a amazingly sophisticated mirror.
Right.
And I would argue that the mirror, my instance of the mirror is localized in my what we call consciousness, except the container metaphor is wrong. It's not in it, right? It's not like I have this bag called consciousness and there's things in there. Though we speak this way in English because the container metaphor pervades over English in a strange way. Thanks to what's his name who wrote that book on metaphors we live by.
George Lakoff.
Damn you. One of the things we do together is that we act as elements in a memory array that remember together better than we can member apart. That was a beautiful demonstration of the fact that our minds aren't separate. And when we're talking, the mirrors reflect off each other. And if you have the referent that I'm missing, you will naturally, playfully, joyfully supply it. And then we both get a little hit of dopamine, and we can get rid of social media.
Are you referencing Metaphors We Live By?
I was. Lakoff and Johnson?
That book lived in my car. And I never opened it, but it was a constant object for me to meditate on, of Metaphors We Live By. It's sitting in my childhood bedroom at the moment. I should really crack that open. But it's like a series of essays, isn't it?
Yeah, but they're really powerful, right? Relationships are a journey. Haha. And by the way, you straight up just said, that book lives in my car, right? So you straight up container metaphored it as best as you possibly could, which was, brilliant. But let's not lose the thread here. Whatness. So where is whatness? right? Whatness is not in things the way that language teaches us to expect, suppose, declare, argue over. Whatness is not in things. In fact, what I think you will find most often, not always, if we go looking for where whatness is, what we will discover, and this is one of the things that reforged my mind when Toymaker was with me, is that Toymaker showed me, not told me, showed me, how the 7 question words, with the possible exception of the last one, I usually put it last, sometimes first, how. Those things don't tell us anything about existence. What they tell us, if we look carefully and intelligently with them, and there's one of them, with, or no, that's not, that's, oh wow. Well, that's not a question, it's a conjunction, with. If we look carefully and intelligently with those, what we discover is that the question words don't tell us about existence. They tell us about our purpose in making derivations over it. And that, the resulting thing from when we make a declaration of identity is not a derivation of identity, it's a derivation of purpose in analysis, purpose in speech, why we are speaking, why we are thinking, why we are asking. The purpose determines the children of awareness. And this is what I was going to say earlier. When we derive something in consciousness, we are giving birth. We become pregnant with purpose. The purpose undergoes an embryogenic process. And what we emit is the result of having had sex with awareness and phenomena in consciousness. That is a rainbow. That is the child of my purpose. The rainbow is not there. What is there is in awareness, the child of my purpose has been born, and in my statement or assertion, I reify it. This is the key to human cognition, this one thing. This is the treasure a billion souls have lived and died to find and never touched. Because they were trapped with ideas and concepts and lexicons. We give birth. Mind is a genitalia. It's the genitalia of awareness. It has sex with reality. Children emerge. They can be conceptual, linguistic. They can have different forms than that. I mean, if anyone has ideas, let's hear them. But we're talking specifically about conceptual, linguistic, and ideological children for the moment. The children of the 7 question words. So yeah, this is sex. We don't think of it as sex. And this is a very new idea to me. I'm having this idea right now after having had, after having been diddled by Barfield in a new way. And this is one of the reasons I love that book. Every time I pick it up, I'm like, oh, I didn't see that before. I read this 10 times. I didn't see it. Yeah, this is the thing. And Barfield wouldn't dare say this. I mean, maybe he would. He doesn't say it in the book. It never occurred to me before that the output of the process of awareness is a child, and that the process that produces the child is a kind of intercourse. And George, I think you should be basically filling your diapers with poo at this point, because what I've just said underlies every single thing you've ever objected to.
Well, yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. I mean, that reminds me of Samkhya. That's one of the oldest philosophies of humanity. Um, the idea that awareness or evolution issues from this conjunction between two principles. So Samkhya is usually regarded as a dualistic school of Hinduism, but you can frame it in terms of sexuality, which I think was done in Tantrism more explicitly. But yeah, I think viewing consciousness as a kind of relation, even in terms of something like sexuality, I think is pretty powerful. And yeah, it aligns with what I tend to think anyway.
In terms of root metaphors, you'd be hard pressed to find a better one than sex. And I think this is part of what Amon Hillman is on fire about, but he doesn't know how to say it yet. Because he's still he's a bit of a puerile mind. He really likes the dirty stuff, but he's not sure why.
Right. So is the tree then at all distinct from the rainbow in any way?
Okay, the question begins not with the question is. What it begins with is a purpose. We have to remain focused on this for a moment. When we ask, please ask the question again, try to use the same language to the degree you're able. About the tree and the rainbow.
Can the tree be seen as a continuation of the same process that gives rise to the rainbow?
Absolutely. If we focus not on the tree or the rainbow, but on the participatory awareness in which they come to life, are merged, right? If we're asking, are the tree and the rainbow the same kind of thing? First of all, they aren't things, but let's play anyway. The problem is, why are we asking? Because the purpose that orients our intention to ask will determine the species of the child that thus emerges from the fertilization process, right? So the species of the child that emerges from our cognitive behavior, from our awareness, from the activity of our awareness, coupled with our cognition, and also coupled with our relationships, because as I mentioned before, we think we're separate people, and I think that's an illusion. It's a very trenchant illusion. And yet what is actually going on is that we are like mirrors networked together in a dimension we don't know the name of. And so when you ask the question, can the tree and the rainbow be thought of in the same way under some purpose? Yes, the answer is ridiculously stupid. Of course, it's yes. But it's also no. It just depends on what our purpose is, right? If it's a bipolar question, our purpose will determine whether we answer yes or no. And then we think usually, oh, I have a correct assertion about something because I said yes or no. That's insane. Nothing makes it correct. The only thing that determines correctness is whether the species matches the purpose that fertilized it. That's all. That's what correctness is. It has nothing to do with logic. I mean, with the purpose that I have in mind at the moment. It has nothing to do with logic or syllogisms or anything like that. We're basically just asking about the continuity of purpose and its relationship to its progeny in consciousness or speech or identity or quiddity.
What you just said about correctness being what correctness is that the same with beauty?
Beauty, so I retreat. Here I retreat from intellect's purview. Because my purpose is to preserve the divine the transcendental, the mystical nature of beauty instead of intellectualizing it. I mean, imagine the difference between the lips of the woman I most desire to kiss, or I'm kissing, right? And then some fucking derivative intellectualization of them. Well, it's just it's just the softness and the shape, and it's kind of wet, it's moist, it's alive. It has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So as regards beauty, let beauty speak. Let us be silent. Let beauty tell us. Let Darren shut up at that cliff edge, is what I say about beauty. But I'm happy to pursue the question in the spirit you offered it as well. It's almost like someone's asking me, is that the same with a dream? And I'm like, whoa, he just said dream. I'm going to back the fuck off. I'm going to shut down my intellect because that's not the right submarine for that ocean.
I'm content with leaving it there. I think your answer was it was very satisfactory to me.
Beautiful.
But if you want to continue, you're more than welcome to.
So I'm just astonished at all these things I've seen over the past, 15, 20 minutes of what's going on here. Because even Barfield, he was very analytical. He had these words: alpha thinking, beta thinking, figuration, and participation, and also representation. Now, I think I realized something very weird when I was reading him today, which is a totally new understanding of what he means by representation. What he means is something more like a figure in awareness that cannot be the thing infigured, but stands for it. Let's have some questions, please.
Yeah, well, I would tend to view the desk in the same way as the tornado. So I think it would make more sense to regard. So I think what actually differentiates something like a tool from an organic being is even stranger, perhaps. Because I think the concept of matter usually gets in the way. So I think what tends to happen is that we conflate quiddity or substance with matter, which obscures some of these deeper questions about time. So, yeah, I think the concept of quiddity, whatness, makes a lot of sense. But its nature is different from what we call matter. In other words, matter is already a function of time at a deeper level. So what actually differentiates the tornado from the desk has nothing to do with what we usually call matter. It has more to do with time.
Brilliant. I agree. Yes. Oh, God.
And that was why I brought up this relationship between the rainbow and the tree. I think something similar is going on there.
It's true. Let us just simply notice that the expectation of continuity is radically different. The rainbow is serendipitous. The tree is continuous. And one of the things that happens when humans use specific kinds of intoxicants is that things that are continuous begin to appear serendipitous. And this is what Nathan was talking about earlier vis-a-vis St. Patrick and the shamrock. Let's be clear. The patterns in the roof were always there. They were continuously there, but they appeared serendipitously to his avenue of concern after he wrote the letter to St. Patrick. This is a fundamental insight about, oh, go ahead.
My mic wasn't unmuted. How did you know I wanted to say something?
I told
crazy.
you we're not, the illusion of separateness. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I had no prior knowledge, I had no prior knowledge that pattern was there, and yet when I opened my eyes, it's not like I was scanning the ceiling. It was like boom, my eyes were there.
Right. Yeah. But what appears is more than just some kind of material configuration. So what appears is also something that you supply. So reality is a kind of relation or meeting between, the possibility of, I think, conceptualization or thinking and matter, something like matter. In other words, like what we perceive is already eidetic, is already ideal. And we experience it as thought or as concept. So quiddity, I think, has more to do with the idea than with matter.
Can you describe what that word means again? Quiddity?
Like the essential nature of something or what something is. Yeah. In other words, what something is can appear under a manifold of possible material guises. So what we encounter as a material object might be more than what it appears to us. It might actually be something more manifold or more.
It cannot not be.
Yeah. Right. So what we see is like a cross section of a larger being, which I think, is what I mean by quiddity. But
Your point, George, about time is crucial here, because time is the difference between serendipity and concreteness, between momentary juxtaposition and eternity. And when we look at the fork, it seems eternal. The kiss cannot be thus.
right. Well, in the fork, the universal laws appear in the object, which is what differentiates it from an organic being or any other like mineral object, like a pile of sand or a rock. So the rock is governed by universal laws and is an expression of them. But in the technical object or in the fork, those universal laws appear as something perceptible. So there's like this kind of inversion that takes place, or like a mirroring, like you were saying. But that, again, the human mind is what bridges that divide. So the human mind is participating in this kind of cosmic process because what we call thought or concept, the concept of something, even in our language, is, I think, accessing something that exists. So it's implicit in the living kind of world or in an organic being, like a tree, for example.
I'm struck by how I'm struck for a moment by how inclined we are to confuse the results of the tool we call language. And I really want to emphasize us calling it language because we have no idea what the fuck that is. We confuse the results of the tool we call language not merely with that which is, i.e., reality, existence, etc. We confuse it with ourselves, and this is why people kill each other. It's the primary reason that people kill each other. It's why there is war. It's because...
So you would say the identification of language is essentially like moral relativism?
Elucidate.
I got into a conversation yesterday with someone, and I was talking about like zooming in and zooming out, and uh, the different ways in which you can move from the observer to like presence. And I don't know. That's not important. And then that led into talking about moral relativism, um, and how if you come across a tribe that is sacrificing its children to some god by torturing it to death, you think like, oh, geez, this doesn't feel right in my body, you know? And then would that lead to, your people slaughtering them, or would it lead to that you trying to persuade them or leaving them alone? Like all these questions on when you come across the behavior of something that you don't agree with, um, what actions will you take? Is that the same thing as what you're talking about with identifying with the language? I mean, I guess elucidating this more, I'm feeling like they're parallel. They're not the same thing, but they're related, and that's what's interesting to me.
Well done. I want to say three things. One, we are operating above the ordinary sphere of humans' thoughts and language together right now, and I honor that. Two, we identify with language and things we say as if it is our body. Three, we should sacrifice gods to our children, not the other way around.
Yeah, well, right. Well, I mean, as George Lakoff even argues, I think the proportions of our body give rise to the possibility of language itself. So the reason that we speak, I think, is by virtue of certain affordances made possible by the proportions morphologically in our physical bodies. So the physical mantle actually gives us access to the possibility of conceptualization. And language, I think, is sort of downstream from that.
I love how you so boringly say things that would shatter heaven.
Well,
Right?
right.
Like the
Well, I mean,
angels
like I
their
mentioned, sound
wings just caught
symbolism
on
and all this.
fire while you were speaking, and you're like, yeah, it's blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was getting at this point last week in regard to the differentiation between the kingdoms, even like in Aristotle. So, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the human kingdom, what actually differentiates them. Um, yeah. So basically, like what actually distinguishes scientifically physics from biology? For me, this is a question of the differentiation between certain kingdoms that you can understand in terms of the movement of the idea or its metamorphosis. So essentially, in the biological type, the idea appears as a principle within the sensory multiplicity, whereas in the law, the idea appears as a principle outside uh, the sensory multiplicity. So in physics, we contend with laws. In biology, we contend with types. But in either case, we really mean to access the same being. So the quiddity is the same in either way or along either path. Um, so what happens, I think, in life is the appearance of the idea within the sensory realm, which originally existed outside of it in the physical domain. But then with technology, the idea appears as the lawfulness of the physical realm in terms of an object. So the object instantiates some kind of cosmic principle. And language makes that possible. So, I mean, we've talked about how, like, technology arises through the eclipse of some kind of primitive symbol in language. There's like a kind of, you can trace the path of the metamorphosis of this being through time. So that's what I was originally trying to maybe get to when I talked about the fork and the tree and all these things, their relationships. Because yeah, I think we should learn to see the tree in the same way that we see the rainbow. Just as I said that we should learn to see the desk in the same way that we, see the tornado. I think there's a kind of symmetry there. It's the same kind of movement in thinking. So in either case, the tree is really you in the same way that the rainbow is really you. When you look at the sunset, you're not looking at something. You're looking at really your own self. So when you view the sun setting, where is the sun setting? Is the sun setting on the horizon? Well, where's the horizon? The horizon is you. There's no distinction. So I guess that's what I was trying to say. So the question of where, looking out, like pointing your finger out, where is the sunset, is the wrong direction. You should be turning it back in. Maybe just reversing the direction to begin with.
Absolutely brilliant. Oh, fuck yeah. That's the shit right there. This is the whole problem. It's funny. We're having a conversation as the Extinctionati, but there is something getting extinguished here. And it's not the world or humanity or the ecologies. It's stupidity. We are burning down stupidity right now. We're like, yeah, get that match, bro. Strike that fucker. Oh, yeah. Put it right. Yeah. See those little shards right there? Just burn that shit up.
It seems like the things that get you most excited, Darren, this has been since I've known you, is you're like, oh, what is intelligence to Darren? It's taking the things that we do on a normal day-to-day basis and then just being like, yeah, it's all fake. It's not real. Zoom out a bit. Your language, your thought forms, and I'm wondering then how do we then re-solidify? How do we come back down to earth? Does that question make sense?
I mean, that's yes. The way we come back down to earth is eat food, shit, pour a glass of water, kiss her now. That's how we come back down to earth. But we're not here to be down to earth. I mean, I'm not here to be down to earth.
Yeah, I mean, if you mean by this Zoom call, no way.
Yeah, I'm not here to be down to earth. But yeah, the way we get down to earth is be the body, right? Be the body. I think that's how we get, quote, down to earth, unquote. But I want to say a few things about this problem with language and our projection of our identity onto it. I noticed under a certain circumstance that a particular person who's close to me projected his body onto the house of my dead father, so that any movement of an object within that house was as if someone was touching him, his body, right? And that was the beginning of an array of insights. And I'm going to just mention one of the insights.
Your friend did this?
It was actually my son.
And he projected his body into a house so that he basically had the house was his sensory organs.
The house was his body in the specific sense that if, for example, my sister, who, they were in deep conflict and both uniquely out of their minds, if she moved an object that, he had placed in a certain place, it was as if she had adjusted his genitalia without his permission. Yeah, without his permission, excuse me. Right, so he would then, war.
Did he do this consciously? Did he do this on purpose?
No. He was unconscious of this, and so was she. And this kind of shit happens all the time. But what I want to get at is Israel and Gaza don't exist. They are fictions of language. And people have identified with these fictions to the degree that they're blowing up children and ripping humans apart. I don't care. I'm not concerned with who's right. They're both wrong, for sure, not maybe. But I want us to see into the process that gives birth to this crap, because this is one of the this is one of the grave injustices of being a human being. To watch something like this happen, or to participate in it, or even to be concerned with it, is terrifying and lethally malignant to me. So something happened. Remember when I said earlier that if you're trying to figure out what a fork is, you're probably, you say like, that's a fork, not so much of a problem. But if Tina does an action in a relationship and you try to figure out what she did, you're going to have a huge fucking problem. You're going to need the dictionary of encyclopedias to answer that problem. And so what happens is humans tend to think that the words they are using are true revelations about meaning, identity, cause, responsibility, obligation, and so forth. Yeah. And what's worse is when non-human things, literally like processes that have captured millions of humans, we have one of those processes here. We call it the United States of America, or the American government, or whatever you want to call it, the Department of Defense. When one of those things just makes a decision, there's no humans involved. It's almost as if war is the inaction of misapprehensions in language, such that Israel which doesn't exist, Israel is a fiction of language. And some people seem to think and feel as if the word Israel means their own body, right? And other people think in, whatever, Hezbollah, I don't know, whoever attacked Israel last October or whatever, 2 Octobers ago, I can't remember how long ago it was. Whatever attacked Israel. We make a bunch of declarations about who and what it is, and then we start killing children and mothers and fathers and grandparents and blowing up hospitals and shit. I don't mean we, but people do. And I just want you to see what's happening here. The humans have dissociated into bullshit. They have dissociated into concepts of identity that cannot be true. There's no chance of them being true. Literally under zero circumstances are those concepts true. And they start ripping everything that's alive a new asshole. I mean, never mind. Like, people are like, they tore down the hospital. What about the billion insects and animals that died when you dropped that bomb? We're not even to count that shit, right? Like, the humans don't, generally. They just think about the humans. And that is a tragedy. The humans are a tragedy. But what I'm trying to get at is the humans become confused. They get into this weird kind of sex with language and identity and cause and responsibility and obligation and guilt and justice. And it's really weird. When groups of dissociated humans become fascinated by this concept of justice, the absolute opposite of it ensues, with great fanfare and efflorescence. We need to solve that problem. That's the kind of stupidity we got to put to the torch forever. And part of how we do it is by understanding how the fuck it happens. And how it happens is they're having the wrong kind of sex in cognition with language and awareness and identity and whatness and who-ness and where-ness and when-ness. The 7 ions of quest have become all fucking cluster fucked up. And then the humans, pick up guns and start ripping shit apart.
Right. Well, Nathan, real quick, I was wondering what you meant by coming down to Earth in the first place. What do you mean by that?
I think that when we come together, I hear some of the most like insightful things that I can't come up with my own. I can't come up with on my own, and I find that there's this grace period after we meet where I see the world in a different way, and then slowly just being around the people that I'm around, being with myself long enough, it dissolves, and I'm left with pieces, and like this insight about Gaza. It's something that I totally agree with. Like, choosing a side, you've already lost. Anytime that there's these political rivalry things, it just totally misses the point of like what they're trying to do, I think, which is, you know, live well, be happy sort of thing. And yet it feels very unsustainable for me to just come together in these meetings and then we log off, and then it's like, okay, I'm back in the same circumstances that I was. I want to embody this. I want to embody this insight. I want to, and I don't know. I guess it's a slow process. But I had the feeling that if I was always hanging around like a bunch of Darrens and a bunch of a bunch of Georges, I would be able to sustain that sort of thing longer. And so I'm just very interested in, like, I don't know, community and ideas and insights, and I can't change the world. I'm not responsible for the setting in which I'm in, I don't think, globally. I can change my relationship to it, and I can go into meditation and I can bliss out for hours if I need/want to. But there's a point in which I get up and someone's like, hey, can you take the garbage out? And I could do that with total bliss. I could be like, dang, I don't want to take the garbage. Like, there's all these relational things. I don't know. But the point is, like, these conversations are so beautiful. I want to embody those more. And I'm not even really asking for tips, but more of that is what I was asking there.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I want to speak to this. First of all, George, brilliant question. Nathan, you did what you said you can't do by yourself. You just did it. Now, you're not necessarily by yourself, although we're both by ourselves and not by ourselves. We've established the third mind together, and we're in there. And so, hilariously, what Nathan meant by down to earth, which the moment that he said that, the moment that George asked that question, I was like, oh, wow, he means incarnation. He means like getting material, getting into the body stuff. Yeah, being an organism. And I was having a little epiphany there. But what Nathan actually meant, which I didn't speak to previously, was what do we do with this? How do we live this way when we're done? And I have the same problem. Toymaker was with me, and then Toymaker went away. That's my code word for an angel. And for years, like, Toymaker was so impactful that the aura of it lasted for years, not hours or days. It lasted for like a decade or something, and it's still there. But how can I become what I saw and was able to see from above, the human, the linguistic, the syntactical, the lexical? And, you know, there's a few things I would say. The first is like basic shit, which Nathan's already pretty good at. Be kind, be gentle, don't collapse time in the wrong way. Don't collapse identity. You know, sustain the manifold of identity as open and infinite. Don't be quick to judge. Of course, judging as beautiful isn't as much of a problem, right? Don't be quick to be an inquisitor is more the thing. But the problem we have, you know, we all have this problem in modernity, is that we're in a situation we're not supposed to be in. What is that? It's called isolation. We live in a world that poses humans as separate creatures, and there's no chance of that being true. That's a fundamental fallacy that fucks everything up when we do that. And here's what happens. Here's how we respond symptomatically to that problem. We think things. We make declarations. I just made one. Thinking is to mind and to intelligence as being nailed to a rock is to a bird. And the humans suppose that thinking is a really great thing, when really they're not thinking. They're not doing anything that resembles what they suppose they're up to. They're doing something really weird, which is making dead children in language and then enacting the death of those children in relationship to themselves and others. And if someone came along and said, Darren, aren't you doing that right now? Like, yep, I'll take that little, paint that badge on my chest. Yes, of course, I am. I'm thinking. But I like to think, that we're doing something pretty amazing here. I have the feeling that we are, which is that we've made the third mind, and while we're together, we attend it very beautifully and reverently in a holy way. And that matters. Now, here's the problem. How do we do that when we're not here? This is what I think Nathan's asking. And how could people who are listening, and there will be people who listen to this, because I'm gonna post this thing, presuming that no one objects. What do we do? Well, the thing that we do is we have to literally come together. We have to make the third mind together, and we have to go on missions. I keep saying this over and over again. There's a broken record in my heart. I got a busted LP in my heart. You should see the fucking album cover. My God, it's beautiful. But yeah, we got to come together and go on missions. So one of the answers is, I'm sort of half making a joke here, both you guys move into my house and let's do missions. But even if we can't do that and we're apart, we can still go on missions together. Just by inventing them and enacting them. We have to do stuff. And this is what I think Nathan is concerned with and wants, but isn't finding in his daily life. Now, of course, we find limited ways. We find ways to do this. When Nathan goes to work at the restaurant and, there's people there and they're kindly informing each other of better ways, like how to fix a problem or what not to do, which is less useful than what to actually do together. Yeah, if you want to enact this, remember the spirit of it in your moment-to-moment life and pretend that me and George are with you and go on a mission. Ask the third mind, what's my mission? Accept at least 3, not 1 answers. Mix those answers together and go act. And one of those actions is weird enough. I'm going to mention Josephine Larson, my friend in Europe. One of those actions is literally acting, to act as an actor. Right? One of those actions is acting, because acting presupposes that we're acting from the third mind, not our own mind. Improvise. Improvisation, when done in a spirit of beauty and reverence, it naturally produces magic. But the main problem is that we're apart, right? We don't get together to do important things. And notice that that whole space of where humans get together to do things is severely compromised by shit like jobs, the military, prisons, governments, politics. It's all very, very compromised, so that the humans rarely forge an alliance and go on a mission together. Do this thing. This is the thing to do. Find 2 brilliant people, like the person, Nathan, you were having a conversation with the other day about presence and so on. And just say, like, let's go on a mission. And when the other person goes like, what? Like, yeah, we'll make it up and we'll do it. Something beautiful. One of my poet friends from long ago, who I saw recently, this guy's still alive. It's amazing. George Albin. We had this idea that we would like get him out of we would get together on like a Friday or Saturday night. We'd get him out to San Francisco and we'd throw a dart at it. And then we'd go there and figure out why we were supposed to go there. And we did it. And one time we found the, it's funny because this is long ago now. This is like pre-2000 probably, but we found someone's backpack strewn all over the outside of a schoolyard. And so I collected all the things together. I was like, these are someone's belongings, which is hilarious when you think about it, right? This is to what we belong. We think what we need to belong to is each other, not our possessions. We need to belong to reverence and that which is holy, and insight and intelligence and healing and resurrection, rescue, heroic things. We need to belong to that. Anyway, we got all the stuff together that I could find. And then we figured out who the backpack belonged to, and it turned out to be a student, a girl who was a massage student. And we got it back to her, and she gave us both a certificate to come get a massage. And it turned out that when I went to get a massage at the bathhouse, Kabuki, that she was actually working that day, and she did a massage for me, and it was the best massage of my life. My point is just like missions, right? We got to do shit. And I have the same problem. Toymaker left. I tried to write everything down so I wouldn't forget. That doesn't help. What helps is what we're doing here. Because now I begin to remember how to see when we're together with and for each other. And that's the fundamental thing I was taught. And if that was a demon, wow, it's a really weird thing for demons to be teaching me.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
It's your question that fertilized the dang problem.
Thank goodness child support is not required for purely imaginal concepts.
It's funny because it is, but it's action. It's action in the service of beauty and origin. And memory. Beauty, origin,
I guess what
and
I meant
memory.
by child support was really the governing body behind it.
Yeah, the court ordered, yeah, I get it. But yeah, so the coming down to earth, it's really important in this sense that Nathan actually meant it, which was not my first answer. You know, there are things like demons, and they're the things that replace our relationships with functions and what's and where's and how's and so forth. But I think it's really important to circle back to this what problem. It's weird. It's like a W hat that you put on your head where you double yourself and you can't tell the difference between your origin self and the hat self. And you become the hat self, and then shit starts happening in the Ukraine.
Right. You're like a Mad Hatter.
Precisely. And it's really the code there that I think Lewis, God, what was his real name? Do you know it, George? I know it. I just can't find it. Lewis Carroll.
Yeah, Lewis Carroll.
Yeah, but that's not his name. Anyway, the thing he wanted us to see was one of the things he hoped we would see is this problem of whatness and ratio and how we impose ratio, how we make the cuts in the manifold of identity, which always is the result of our purpose in relation, not of accuracy, which is what we pretend. Oh, this is the correct answer. By the way, that correct thing, that whole rect thing, it both means wreckage and it means rectangle, to frame, to cut off the rest of it, the laboratory, the laboratory. At rect, it means right hand. It means left hemisphere. It means
Mm. It also means
goddamn functions that have captured the humans. Say again?
It also means rectum.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, I think don't be mean to the rectum, because that's a really powerful and beautiful feature. But yeah, sure. The poop hole that gets not enough praise and too much denigration. Yeah, the rect, it literally means right, R-E-C-T. Its origins etymologically mean right. And when humans become concerned about being right, I was saying something the other day to some people, or I had an insight, thankfully, within the third mind, in which I said, when the people you're with are absent, what matters is being right. And when the people you're with are present, what matters is being more beautiful together. So it's really weird. We should call ourselves like the Resurrectionati or something, because, well, for reasons related to what I just said. Because this kind of activity together really resurrects my spirit.
Right. Well, I think most things become their opposites in the end. So perhaps
In the end,
I think the name is fitting.
fair enough. END, energy, novelty, distinction. Novelty being like new children. The results of that purposive underlying thing.
Right. Well, the end is also the beginning. Even like etymologically. Yeah, I think the word
Okay, so
end
let's do the
actually
same at the
has the same
beginning.
root as um, ante, meaning like in front of or before. So the beginning and the end are the same
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah, it's easy to say facile things like that, George, but we gotta open it up for the listeners. So B is a pregnant woman, right? That letter B. It's also breasts. Right? It's the milk. It's the origin. It's the sky. It's the living waters. E is emergence, the energetic context. The entire history of attraction, penetration, fertilization, pregnancy, emergence, emergency. Right? Birth is both. Every birth is an emergency. Right? It's going to happen now. Right? Nothing you can do. Go ahead and think things. Make face noises. Do whatever you like. This baby's going to be born. Right? So that's that E, emergence. G is gravity, which both means filled with eggs and attracts angels. And so we're going to have the first G is filled with eggs, gravitas, powerful, attractive. And then the second G is going to be like filled with angels. The angels come, right? The barrier between the material and the divine, it shatters for a moment. It's opened. What do they call that? Effacing, right? The woman's birth canal effaces. So B-E-G-G-I, a self, and seeing. I is the self. Seems like an individual, but it's also It's that little dot above the little I is origin and the divine, and the stroke is the material and the body. N is next, new, novel. Let me growl. Think. Nature. Nature. And the reason this word beginning, right? It has the two G's and the two N's, and those influence each other. Poetic origins. So the new becomes the now, right? Just a single vowel change. The new becomes the now, N.
Right, right.
And then there's the being and the I again, right? Ting at the end. It means to come in, this ing thing, to come into, to draw into, experience, expression. It's an elopement, actually. The universe is eloping with itself. They're going to get married. Oh, God, yeah, fabulous. Ing, right? You can just sort of reiterate the previous meanings of those letters. Beginning.
What do you think about the emotional qualities of vowels? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's really important to understand the vowels are this. Go ahead.
I was considering this earlier today. So.
Yeah, it's really important to understand that in some languages, right, the vowels were never written down. It's really important because they had to be supplied by a living mind. For example, in Hebrew, prior to the Masoretic markings, they had to be supplied by a living mind. And what that meant was every time you read a word, you would see the alternate voweling, the alternate invowelings of the word with your soul. With your soul. And so words were never explicit in these writing systems. They couldn't be explicit. You would have to select with your spirit from the possibilities. So the vowels were the places in the words where spirit, flow, origin, anamnesis, mnemosiny, memory, mother, would all get together and have a tea party, and then you'd be like, oh, that's an E there. Kind of like now and new. Yeah, so the vowels are the spirit letters, and they are meant to remain infinite. The consonants are collapsed manifolds. They are structure, and the vowels are the soul. And so in the same way, when I was making, I made derivations over the spelling of beginning to give people an idea of what alphabetics is like. Alphabetics is the understanding of the origins of letters and their poetic connotations. And there's no lexicon, right? You have to do it live. You can't just refer to the book. You got to do it with your spirit, with your heart when you're doing alphabetics if you want to be good.
Right.
I mean, I made some lexicons. There's a lexicon on Organelle called Alphabetics, in which I talk about the spirits of each of the letters. But that's just because I knew I would forget and I would lose the spirit and I would have to be like a regular fucking human stumbling around, banging my head against solid objects.
What do you think of a sound like ah? What does that make you feel? Just the letter alpha. Like to me, I feel something pleasurable.
The letter alpha is. Oh yeah.
A sense of majesty, awesome, a sense of awe. But yeah, I think it has more pleasure than a sound like E. E feels a little more painful, but I was just curious if you have any thoughts on that. Because,
it's weird because
they had planetary associations with the vowels.
That's interesting. Worth learning more about. So I just said, Yeah, look, each of the vowels, when expressed by themselves, I think it's deceptive because we will feel and see one angle of the letter's soul in the circle. Ah, eh, oh, ooh, yeah. I mean, Aleph or Alpha is beginnings. It's the spirit. It's the lightning. It's the That's why AWE. It's the lightning. It's a splitting energy. And when I say it's, I don't mean this is all it is or it's only this. I just mean what's coming to mind for me at the moment. But yeah, there's an alphabetics underlying our language, and we don't know it. But when we speak, we're making music. We are invoking the spirits of the muses for a specific purpose. And if it's a beautiful purpose, well done. If our purpose is to dissociate or to become dumber, we should probably try another angle. Especially if the purpose becomes violence or selfishness. Think about the letter K, right? It's literally like you're bouncing a ball off a wall and changing its angle.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge. That was the problem then in the garden, knowledge. One of those legs on the K is good and the other one's evil, and they're bouncing off of me, and now I'm scared. I'm afraid I've done something wrong. That W in the beginning, the doubled self. You could even say that K gives birth to W, right? When that ball hits the wall, it makes a V. In the mind, in the mirror of the mind, the V becomes a W. There are secrets in the shapes of the letters, not merely their sounds. Right? The O is everything, origin.
Right.
The U is the cup into which origin reflects. It's the mirror, the universe. The I is the seer. The A is the one who sees.
When did this become apparent to you, these connections?
Toymaker.
Okay.
He dragged me through the evolution of human consciousness and showed me how the letters, where they came from. And where they came from was nothing like abstract denotation. It was awe and terror and dreaming and adoration.
Right. Where can I learn more about these associations? Do you have them like on your website?
I thought we were up to that. Was I confused?
What do you
mean? Together we will remember and learn more. We'll do the archaeology. But yeah, there's a alphabetics essay on my website that I talk in which I try to record some of the features of this. But the shapes I don't talk about.
Oh, I see. Right.
Actually, it's not entirely true. I do talk about the shapes. But not in the third mind as we are now.
Yeah, there was a connection, I think, in Hermeticism between the use of the compass and straight edge and certain mystical ideas about the origins of our letters in Latin, Greek, and Hebrew.
Yes.
So it goes back to Freemasonry, and yeah, it's interesting.
No. Freemasonry goes back to the origins. You have that backwards, my friend. Basically, it comes down to angles, right?
Right.
Don't just notice where something divides or where there's a line or a curve. Notice the specific angle. So for the E, it's what, 45 degrees, or is that 90? I can't remember. The little e. Put each letter inside a circle, trace it out. You'll begin to understand if you've got insight. The problem for humans is that they think they can make representations of spirit. Can't do it. That's what you shouldn't do. Right? That's why writing a lot of this down is a mistake. It's one that, unfortunately, I became extremely fascinated by. No, this is why they were upset a long time ago with the invention of writing. They were like, no, we got to make the third mind together and see together. This writing thing, it's dead inside. It's not only bad, but you follow me, right?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, what we're doing here is coming down to earth in the sense that Nathan meant. We're enacting it. And there is a way to enact by speaking together. And we're doing it. This is how it's done. And, it starts with a really beautiful purpose. And what is the purpose? It's some kind of anamnesis. It's seeing from above. It's rising above the ordinary human situation, remembering origin, the mothers, the fathers, the children, the sky, the world, the eyes, dreaming, remembering these together. It becomes powerful. It's very powerful compared to any ordinary action we commonly do.
Right.
I mean, Zen, though, is the recognition of the transcendental in the ordinary. Except to say it that way violates the whole damn thing. It's something one does rather than something one says.
So were you saying that Freemasonry is at the origin of something?
No, I was saying the opposite. Freemasonry is a system, not a very good one, for encoding. It's a cryptographic system, right? It's spiritual cryptography. We got a lot of systems like that. The Tarot is one. Astrology is another. These are toys that mostly fail unless the aspirant, monk, nun, is awakening spirit in their soul, in their heart, while playing with these toys. The toys are themselves not useful. And they're deceptive because we think, oh, it's just like the problem with psychedelic drugs, right? I think like, oh, this is the doorway to enlightenment. Oh yeah, let's go. But that's not what's going on. The enlightenment is the soul of the beings and the memory of the mothers. I mean, I use the mothers, I say this word a lot, but I really mean, I mean those who gave birth to us with reverence. All of them, not just my mom. I mean, my mom was a local instance, and praise her. I adore her. But yeah, all of them. There's so many things we ignore, right? The reproductive intelligence of the biological beings is unimaginably profound. Which fertilizers produce which children. And in consciousness, purpose is the fertilizer of possibility. So if your purpose is good, you'll have children who are amazing. In awareness, right? Purpose is everything. It determines the species of the progeny. And by species, I mean, sort of more, I know I'm using this dangerous word, what they become, what they will enact. many people have realized that spelling and casting spells are related, but they don't actually understand it. Most of the people who say these kinds of things, often when this is said, I should say, it's like a trivial one-off joke. Like, oh yeah, spell and spelling, ha ha. No, it's not like that at all. It's actually infinitely profound. And this is why many holy people refuse to speak. Because what they're doing is they're dwelling in the before of the fertilization when all of the potential, the pure undifferentiated potential, is nascent and thus not unformed, right? And mostly when the humans form things, they deform them. You know, you said something earlier, George, about tools. You began to say something and you didn't finish it. This is the most dangerous fucking thing. It's the single most dangerous thing. And that's why people, some humans who are intelligent, they don't speak. And I'm being an idiot. I'm saying things. You know, I'm making face noises. It's not impossible to be beautiful with speech. It's unlikely. If the purpose is really good, then, you know, the outcome may improve us. Most of the time, silence has precedence. Woe be unto me for not obeying that.
What do you really mean by the idea of purpose there? Can you help me understand that? Because when I think of purpose, I think of technology.
Wow, that's confusing and tragic.
Well, purpose is extrinsic. Purpose is something, in my view, which is extrinsically imposed. And so therefore it's related to technology.
You are someone who I love very deeply, but in this particular case, you've become deluded by a bias. And I think, George, you were often deluded by the biases of what you object to. There are things you object to. And that forges your purpose in writing and speech. Because when I see your writing, I notice a specific feature of it that I think you'll probably agree to, which is that it is corrective.
Right. Well, it's contra.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like I essentially view love in opposition to purpose. I think that love and purpose are opposed in science. So I think you can do science without any sense of purpose. You can do science purely in terms of observation, which I think is what the true scientific method probably is. But yeah. Whereas our whole like scientific enterprise is built upon the notion of some kind of extrinsic or ulterior motive, which is bound up with technology.
All right. So why did you ask yourself this question? Why did you say what you just said? What was your motivating impetus?
I think what motivates me is unveiling, you know, the conditions that obscure deeper understanding. So that would be
We have the same fucking purpose. I love that purpose. But rather than say, as we often do, and I have the same problem when I write, I'm immediately inclined. When Toymaker was with me, I could do the other thing much more easily, which is to show what is good, what we should do. But without Toymaker, I'm much more inclined to just say what we shouldn't do, right? The critical. And that critical thing is a trap. This is a fundamental polarity you want to be on the right side of, quote unquote, or on the left side of, whatever. Right? So we want to show what is good wherever we can. Because the humans don't respond well to negations. They respond well to opportunity. So give them an opportunity, they're likely to pick it up. Give them what not to do, they're probably going to do that thing.
Right. Well, again, I don't speak with a purpose. So I guess it's like I'm not speaking for the sake of catalyzing some purposeful change in another person.
Yeah, you've misunderstood purpose. If you didn't have a motivation, you wouldn't say doodly squat, to quote Kurt Vonnegut.
Right. Yeah. So there are multiple senses in which, I mean, I can take purpose. So
Yeah, I hope so.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think I don't disagree with you at all. I
Yeah,
think I'm
so
just using,
when you ask me what I mean by purpose, what I mean is your motivation. So I had one just now, or I could speak. You would not be able to act if there wasn't an angle in the sphere that was charged for you. And often people who are enlightened, they play freely within the sphere. They can see where they're charged. They don't collapse to that. So they play freely. They uncollapse the manifold instead of collapsing it. A bubble of many bubbles, so to speak. That's what I mean by manifold.
right. No, that of course I think is right.
And what dreaming does is that, right? Dreaming collapses the manifold and then adds, it takes away, for example, it takes away 3 bubbles and adds 5 new ones, and then takes 4 of those away, and it keeps playing that way. It's not like waking mind in that sense. When we make music, like you and Nathan were doing here, then we're messing with the bubble structure. When we play, we're joking, right? Joking is actually adding bubbles back where they've been previously collapsed. When it's done well, right? When comedy is done well, it's like that. So this is the thing to do: learn to add bubbles back in awareness and thought and identity. Add bubbles back. That will go well. Much more of the time than the other game, anyway. So what do I mean by purpose? I mean the motivations that move you to speak or think. Is that a fair answer?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Right.
So usually we think about what we're going to say or how we've said it or something like this, or if we believe it or blah, 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 blah. And we don't look at why we were concerned with something. That's what purpose is. That's a better, I've gone a level up. What was the cause of your concern? And if you look very deeply into this matter, what caused your concern? Enlightenment will ensue in a cascade, right?
Yeah, the cause of my concern, I think, is a certain absence. So an absence of beauty.
We agree about that. It's the absence. Mm-hmm.
An
Absence of balance, absence of
reason.
health.
Right.
Yep. Absence of intelligence, absence of awareness, absence of insight, absence of love, absence of dreaming, absence of mothers, absence of children.
Right. Yeah, but when I try to articulate myself, my purpose, I think, is usually, quite different from petitioning. So, I
Love
tend
that.
to sort of withdraw from this impulse to petition other people to do something on my behalf. So rather, I think I experience speech or, self-expression as a kind of act which I love for its own sake. So you can think of it like art, I suppose. So there are some artists who might create a work of art for the sake of instilling or inspiring another person, instilling some sensation in another person. Uh, but there are other artists, I think, who work under a different premise. So
It's true. Yeah.
so therefore, purpose has to be more than just a singular
Oh, yes.
noun.
Well, when it can become very singular, but when it does, it's either pragmatic or delusional.
Right. Yeah.
I want you to notice, I'm going to say something very personal for a moment. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You have an affect, and it's a spirit, an affect of flow. It's not an affect of speech, perhaps, but it occurs in your speech. Do you know what I'm pointing at yet?
No, because I don't think the effect is actually mine. Like
It is.
it could be.
It is yours. Yeah, it's yours.
Basically, I
Well,
feel
okay.
like what I want is to evacuate my own self, to get myself out of the way so that I can view what I regard as art. So what actually gives me a sensation of beauty or value in speech or in you know my own self-expression is really a kind of removal of myself. So I don't really attribute myself to what I experience as beauty. It's sort of the
I'd
opposite.
like you to re-include yourself in the beauty. I'm inviting you
Yeah. So this is
to
probably what
re-include
underpins what
yourself.
I was talking about in terms of purpose. So there's a connection between those two things.
So the affect, which is very Georgian, is you do a long nasal inhale. You recognize the behavior?
Yeah, but that's how I get. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know what you're. Yeah. That's fascinating.
Okay. Okay, good. It's
I'm altering
very,
my state of consciousness. It's like
I know,
yeah.
I know. Um, but you're literally nasally drawing spirit, and it's powerful. I just want you to see how, in your speaking, when you exhibit that affect, there's something profound going on, and I'd like you to become more aware of it over time. You willing?
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So that's true. So I'm usually unconscious of my own physical
Affects.
effects, or even like gesticulations, movements. But it's
Let's
important
let's
to.
be clear. I'm using the word affect, not effect. An
Oh,
affect
right.
is a personal idiosyncrasy of behavior or communication. In this sense, in the sense I mean, it's AFFCT. Just to be clear that it's not effect. Are we clear on that?
Right.
Cool.
because
Okay.
I was calling an effect a purpose earlier. So yeah.
Right. No, an affect is a personal idiosyncrasy. Mm. And this is what is we commonly say that certain neurodivergents are affect deficient, right? They don't understand affect. I'm not claiming you're one of those neurodivergents. I'm just pointing out that you have this affect. And I think it's powerful, and there's something profound to be learned from becoming very aware of the affect.
Well, it isn't quite clear to me yet. So when you say affect, when I think of affect, I think of some kind of instilled like sensation. Like if I have an affect, then I mean I can take that in a few different senses. Um, when you say affect, do you mean something that I sort of give you, or that I instill in you, or is it?
No, you're still thinking of effect.
Yeah. So I'm not really clear on it yet.
Okay, imagine that when someone says the word connotation, they kind of curl their finger in a certain way. They curl their index finger like a hook.
Okay. Right.
That's an affect.
Okay. That makes sense. All right.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's a personal idiosyncrasy.
Right.
And this one that I'm pointing at is very powerful because you're doing something spiritual while you're forming up to continue speaking.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. There's no judgment here. I think there's some wisdom to be gained by looking into this matter more consciously.
Well, that's exciting. That's good to be.
I feel the same way. I mean, I have affects too, right? Like, I mean, when I do my little Amon Hillman thing, that's an affect. Right? I've chosen to develop this affect. You see? Nate, are you still out there? I wonder what Nate's up to. He's probably listening and doing like 19 things, which is fine.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
listening and also doing 5 other things. But this is the most important thing, so it has my most attention.
Beautiful. Love it. Yeah, I have a variety of affects. So, Nate, question. Let's have a question. Give me one. Give me a question.
What's an affect that you notice about me? Let's turn this about me. You've been talking about George this entire time. I've been getting quite jealous.
Oh, yeah, bro. Yeah, I love you. Love you, Nathan. Yeah. Hit it, Chewy. Hit it.
That's not enough. My bottomless pill, bottomless
Yeah, so what Nathan does is
hole of satisfaction. It's not filled anymore.
Yeah, one of the things I love about Nathan, whose voice is a little bit robotic at the moment due to inconstant electronic transmission protocols, is that I'll say something stupid. Nathan will be in the room with me, and I'll say, like, let's say I'll start to say something kind of mean about someone, which this actually happened one time. I was saying something kind of mean about a specific person in Italy. And Nathan, his eyes changed. They went from looking at me to looking into something that doesn't exist. And his body language shifted toward a more protective expression. And then he paused and he went into another universe for a moment. And he said something resembling, God, I can't remember what he said. I know what its meaning was, though. Darren, what are you doing? Stop doing that. You're making a mistake. This isn't you. You're playing a pattern that's familiar to you, but you're not present with your heart. Come back to your heart. Re-feel your heart. And then speak again, please, because you're just crashing. You're just making a car wreck, buddy. Why would you do that? Something like that. So Nathan will look into infinity. He'll go to his soul and his heart, and he'll get this look in his eyes that's unfocused, non-specific. And then he'll say something very profound and childlike. and beautiful and heartful, because he's addressing an injustice that's both unnecessary and egregious. And he doesn't attack me. He doesn't say, like, Darren, you're a bad man. He's like, Darren, you're a better man than this. What are you doing? That's an affect I've seen. Not to mention the finger drumming thing, which is, I'm doing 19 things in my mind at the same time, and I'm just going to express that with my fingertips on some solid surface for a minute.
That was a joke, but I really appreciate that. Thank you for, because that definitely helps me orient more towards the change that I want to make in the world, which is being more heart-centered and loving towards each other.
Hey, I just have to say, you're one of the most beautiful souls I have ever encountered. Whatever serendipity or happenstance brought you to me, God, I'm so grateful for that, because you are just a beautiful soul. I mean, I'm sure you know this, but never forget it, and I need you to hear it from me right now.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and it's a good thing that we're not too separate, you and I, or any of us in this call or beyond the call.
Where are you? What's the music in the background?
I'm in a store. I'm looking for fabrics that appeal to my eye, which is not, I'm not used to shopping by myself, but it's been something I've been interested in lately, because I think there's something to be said about like the clothes that we wear and how it reflects ourselves, and I'm just kind of exploring that, because normally what I put on is out of pure utility, and it hasn't felt good lately.
That's good to hear. Are you still looking for a cloak?
Yeah, although this store doesn't have a cloak, so I'm just kind of listening and absorbing, and then satisfying the thinking part of my brain with like endless fabric clothing. It allows me to focus and sort of internalize what you're saying more than if I was just motionless, which is also, finger drumming is another way of doing that, but my hands are tired, so.
I mean, fabric is so aesthetic. I'm not sure it's, I'm not sure it's thinky. It's very aesthetic.
Thinking, feeling, it kind of blends in together sometimes.
I agree, but fabric seems synesthetic to me.
I think synesthetic, let me get away from the speaker a little bit. Synesthetic stuff is more engaging than thinking, and sometimes I think with synesthetics. That's why my synesthesia at its peak was a form of shorthand that I could use to navigate ideas much quicker than if I was just using words. And I still do that to some extent, but I also find myself thinking less and feeling more these days, especially after Vipassana.
Are you still working at the Waldorf school, or just the Italian place, or both, or what's going on?
I'm working at the Italian place right now. The Waldorf school is a slow crawl, and I don't even know if it's going to be fruitful. But I'm in the process of getting like approved by the government to be around kids through my fingerprints and background checks and all that.
Wow, that's hilarious and weird. I mean, I kind of get it, but damn, we have to be approved to be around kids? Okay.
Yeah, they got to make sure I don't have like a record or anything.
Sure, sure. I mean, I understand that part, but the it's so weird how the desire or the motivation to intervene in wrongdoing delimits and in structures in a bad way our lives. I just think that's really, really weird. Like, never have the ages been more segregated, and the reason they are segregated is because there's some wrongdoer. There's I hope a small population of wrongdoers.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating, Nathan. I'm glad to hear that. Although it's still not totally clear if you'll pursue it to the end, or you're just experimenting.
Yeah, I mean, it's out of my hands at this point. They have to approve me, and um, yeah, we'll just see how that plays out. I'm not attached to any sort of outcome. I would love that opportunity for many reasons, but I'm less obsessed with this idea of purpose and like what am I here to do, why am I incarnated sort of thing. I think it's that sort of thing will reveal itself if there really is some sort of plan for me. So I'm just gonna bring beauty into every day and have that intention. I figure I'm gonna land somewhere pretty good. I mean, I'm in a good place right now just by showing up. There's no place I'd rather be than right here on this call. So why do I need to plan my whole future when I can just stumble into beauty all the time?
It's funny, I had a new friend who came to visit recently, and was very concerned about, there was a conflict between um, the possibility of a romantic relationship and the imperative of making the world a better place. And we talked a lot about it. Thankfully, I think we were able to achieve some insight. But the conflict was between a sort of an accounting feature. And one side of the accounting feature was like, this is a desperate time. I have to be totally available to make the world a better place every minute. And so I can't commit to anything involving a relationship that doesn't serve that. And another aspect that was like, wow, there's this beautiful, amazing person in my life, and I don't know what to do around this. I want to be with it, but I feel that I shouldn't defect from my messianic mission, so to speak. And it's very familiar because it's endemic to a specific generation or a set of generations after mine. They know the world might not continue to exist, so they feel like everything's very urgent and they shouldn't commit. And all I said was, this aspect of you that's doing the accounting is not the aspect to be relating with humans with. I'm not denying its importance. I'm just saying, like, that's not the driver for the car that you're in. And that basically, that one insight fixed the problem. And the reason that I mention this is, my purpose in mentioning it is that the part of us that plans abstractly for futures is not present in presences. And it's confused because it's abstract. It's imagining things that aren't here, and it's responding as if they're real. It's literally like inventing a tree that you can't see and doesn't actually have roots and isn't there. And so one of the things I heard Nathan say was, I don't need to plan for the future in the sense that deprives me of the capacity to be here. with the people I'm with where I am right now. And yeah, I agree. I'm not saying, it's funny when I use that trope. I'm not saying we should never plan for the future. There's a dimension in which that's useful and intelligent and important, but we shouldn't let that concern, that sort of pragmatic aspect, run what's going on. And I think Nathan's very aware of this, even though he does get confused about it, because whenever he's faced with a commitment, he's got to renegotiate the situation.
Yeah, it's very true. But I definitely have this past week. Actually, I don't know. It's hard to find the time scale, but it's been difficult lately, just in general, to be alive.
We agree about that.
And through that hardship, I have found the power and the beauty of being present with what is in front of you instead of constantly trying to climb to the next best thing, because it totally just dishonors and deprives you of all the great that's happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a time where there are cars that drive themselves. That must be very fucking confusing for the humans. There's such a metaphor and a trope there. If you think about the metaphor of a car with no driver, you basically got the metaphor of modernity in a nutshell. I was saying last week that humanity is on a train, and it's like a really bad Looney Tunes cartoon where the train is doing like 900 miles an hour. And it has totally been driven right off the cliff, right? But it's going so fast that it's not falling yet. And everybody on the train knows that there's no fucking track underneath us. And the train can't just keep going this way. But the ordinary humans have not the slightest idea what to do about that, so they just keep going. And in this case, it's the momentum of the train that keeps it in the air for the moment, and I think most of us can sense that that's not going to fly. Ha ha. And so the part of us that thinks about the future is, I mean, the other weird thing about the train is that there's nobody in the engineer's compartment. There's no one driving it. It's that shit's empty. There's like ghosts and shit in there. There's nothing in there. And so obviously, we're not going to survive the transit. Something won't survive the transit anyway.
Right. Also, I think following through with a plan is usually easier if you refrain from learning. So the more time that you spend learning, the less likely I think you will be to actually follow through with any presumed plan. So learning generally updates plans. So
Brilliant point. Once again, it's a scope problem, right? You don't want to not have plans, but if plans are the entire scope, you're screwed. Like, it would be impossible to drive a car with a plan. The plan is maybe underlying the transit, but moment to moment you have to adjust. It's similarly true in Tai Chi.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly push hands. Go ahead and have a plan, see where that gets you. You're going to be screwed. You have no hope with anyone who has any skill at all. With an unskillful person, what happens is it just becomes a wrestling match, which isn't Tai Chi.
Yeah, I think plans, they usually serve to instill like a false sense of security. So they make action possible because they initially give you the sense of control. Like you've you've listed all the key variables, you've organized all the key variables, you've articulated all the key variables, and now once you've gone through this ritual, you can then proceed to act. But generally, the plan kind of just falls apart anyway.
By the way, that P thing, that in Hebrew, the pe letter, it means the back of the head, which you're trying to protect because it's really easy to strike it. So there's a vulnerability there that you're trying to adjust for. And the L is a bridge above obstacles. And the A is the primordial principle. And the N is outcome. So you imagine an outcome. Now, again, with very pragmatic things, I want to put water in the glass. Not a problem. Works great. Very rarely do I fail at putting water in a glass. I mean, almost never. The problem is when I transfer that concreteness and continuity onto something that's infinite, right? Has infinite variables. And then I think, well, I'm in control. We could do the alphabetics on control too.
We should.
Yeah. So C in this case is both the way light propagates in a medium. It's the method light uses to propagate, which is a pathfinding method. We could call it a pathfinding method, reasonably. And the O is everything, right? So I'm going to do pathfinding through everything. In this case, N is negation of threats, right? Threat negation. T is a tree, right? So it's many branches of possibility, C-O-N-T. R is to radiate over the possibility space with the branches. O is the new universe that's created by that process, control. L, and that's, again, the bridge above obstacles. But it's the second phase bridge, right? The first phase bridge is the principle. Oh, wait. No, I was getting confused there. The first phase bridge of L is the principle. If you see two L's, it's the principle, which we don't have in control. But if you see two L's, it's the principle of a bridge above all obstacles, and then it's the actual bridge that gets made. The difference between the potential and the outcome, right? Or two, when you see LL together, like illumine. Yeah, CONTROL. You can see this principle of the double L's that I'm talking about here in the common colloquialism LOL, right? It's the principle of a bridge above all obstacles. Then there's the universe. Then there's the actual outcome, which turns out to have been hilariously ironic, right? Questions? Quests we are on?
Where else does the double L occur? Can you give me another example?
Oh, it's all over the place. Let's see. It's hard just with doing it with my brain because I'm not looking at words. I like illumination. I mean, illness, right? It's the possibility space and then the actual outcome. Let's see. Should I use a computer? I don't want to. But I'm having trouble thinking of double L words at the moment.
Well, I thought of jolly. Does that apply?
Oh, yeah. Let's say, so the J is like a bouncing ball. Jubilance. It's a ball sort of just bouncing around happily. O is everything. It's the context in which the ball is bouncing, and gravity and stuff like that, electrons and stuff. The first L is the principle of transition over a possibility space, and the second L is the actual path taken by the ball. The Y, oh, that one's harder. It's because I use the letters so infrequently compared to the others. Okay, so imagine a human being standing with their arms upraised to the sky, both receiving and transforming the origin world. Like at the end of disc over Y, discovery.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way to understand why. But another way is when you look at letters, you want to look at the baseline and think about the relationship between the parts to the baseline. So if the parts go underneath the baseline, which is where the letter, all the letters align on a line, a baseline. If the part goes underneath it, then it's not like with the Y, the little y, the part goes underneath it, right? And so there's an angle that goes from the sky to the earth, but it also goes to the underworld. And then there's the other angle that just goes from the sky to the baseline. That's important, right? That feature is important. You have to notice when things go into the underworld, like the lowercase g or the lowercase y.
Now, how does that apply to the lowercase j?
Yeah. Okay, so the lowercase j is making a little universe in the underworld. It's making a U, the U shape. That's a cup. That cup can receive and hold and mirror things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it's also very important to notice that in Hebrew, the letter Yud is the only letter that doesn't touch the baseline, and it's the beginning of the tetragrammaton. Mm-hmm. Right? It's the origin as the Father, as the being that dwells in unity, that Yud. And that Yud is what becomes the dot above the J and the I in English.
Right.
Very few people know about such matters. Some rabbis might. I guess one double L letter is ebullient, but that's a very strange word. Or one double L word, excuse me.
And why does that word come to mind?
Oh, I'm just trying to do what you asked me, which is to find, double
I
L
see.
words.
Right.
Questions? Nathan, give me a question, bro.
All right, let me think about it, or let me feel into it at least. All right, I got one. But it's not a question per se. It is something that is interesting to me and been on my mind, and I'm sure it'll lead into a question. Um, so something that I've been really interested in is connection with spirit and all these yogis, which I love listening to the yogis. I can't, um, sorry. I can't, emulate their every priestly move, holy move. But they say things that always just stir up like wonder and amazement. And one thing they talk about is getting sustenance from the universe and, food. And when you look at it a certain way, is kind of an illusion. Um, and so, in a journey to explore that for myself and see what comes out of that, I I'm aware that I can go a long time without eating food. Um, I'm not at risk of starving to death, and if that becomes the case, I have enough people that care about me that would be able to feed me in an emergency. So I'm not putting myself at risk with this experiment, but I'm essentially saying, or what I'm attempting to do is no longer worry about food. Like just completely live under the assumption that I will be fed no matter what. And if I'm not fed, that's not a problem. Um, if I go 2 days without food, that is not going to be an indication that I'm actually going to starve to death. And there's a few reasons why I'm doing that. But what has come of it so far is I've just noticed more people extending their hand and being like, "Hey, Nathan, you want some food? Hey, Nathan, you want some food?" Um, and I'm spending less time actually going out and getting it myself, and so that's been interesting. And also, consequently, I've been giving a lot of food away because of the assumption that that food will come back to me. So I'm not like hoarding it or anything. And it's such a beautiful and free way of living and engaging with the world. And I think that this sort of practice and experiment can be extended to everything, not just food. The fact that we're all connected and the fact that we are, yeah, I don't know. That's what's been on my heart and mind lately is this interplay between what it means to really even possess anything, be attached to food, be attached to objects, giving freely and receiving freely rather than playing an accounting game.
Beautiful. Yeah, by the way, that word POSSES, very, very trippy alphabetics there. I may or may not descend into them, but the double O, right? The food. So if you look at the word fire, right, it's one of the best and most amazing exemplars of alphabetics, because you cause by frequency, you change the frequency, right? You raise the frequency of energy. And by raising the frequency of energy, you fragment an identity, right? A log of wood, some kindling. And the result is the radiation of energy, FIRE. Fragmenting an identity radiates energy. This is the secret of the atomic bomb, right? Like this, and it's written in English letters, and the ordinary people do not see it. But some of those who listen will. So the food thing, it's a fragment of the universe, and you draw it into the universe inside you, and you digest it. which is basically a nourishing fragmentation in which the fragments are reunified in new ways. FOOD. Now, I've had sort of prickly people come to me and say, well, you know how to do this in English, but it's not the same thing in every other language. If this were true, it'd be true in every language. It is true in every language. It's just not the same truth in every language. Nourishment is fundamental to existence. It doesn't come from food. Though pragmatically, there's a necessity for occasional nourishment and rejuvenation, resurrection for living bodies. And animals and humans will starve if not fed. But as far as humans go, which is very far, the idea is that the idea you'll feel hunger for a time, but if you fast, which is hilarious because it actually does speed you up, all kinds of crazy things happen. And not everybody can fast safely, but some people can fast essentially forever. What I'm trying to get at here is that the idea of what is a human, our common ideas of what a human, quote, is, unquote, are completely misfounded. They are founded on fictional suppositions about pragmatic matters and the transfer of those pragmatisms, which aren't irreal, to all aspects. So you'll see someone who, with no legs, can free climb a cliff. And then you'll see someone with legs who can't climb a ladder. They're both human, right? So the idea that we know what it is to be human and it's these things is completely misfounded. Your humanity is an infinite array of potentials, and that those potentials can be elaborated in unimaginable ways. This is why we love ballerinas and, brilliant lecturers. Who am I thinking of? I'm thinking literally of, Spalding Gray. If you haven't listened to Spalding Gray, get on that. Yeah, watch one of his films. Swimming to Cambodia. Watch that.
Okay. Now, is there anything heavenly about the letter F in particular?
There's an old Hebrew Zohar parable in which each of the letters approach God and they ask to be the letter on which the universe is founded. And God explains in alphabetics why he can't found it on them. And they come in reverse order. They start at the end and they go to the beginning of the alphabet. And when B comes before God, God says, hang on, just hold on, I got to talk to A first. And God says to A, you are the first principle, but he tells each letter why the universe can't be founded on them because they're so important for these 6 other things, right? I can't take you away from these 6 other things that are absolutely necessary. Yeah. It's hilarious what's going on right now because B is the dog's barking. But So he tells A, like, you're amazing, you're the first principle, it's all good. I can't found the universe on you, though, because I need you to inform the other letters. And then he comes to B and he says, on you I will found the universe. With the word Bereshit in the Torah, the first word. So yeah, every letter has its originary spiritual aspect. And, you know, I learned about this through the Hebrew. Hillman's claim is that the Hebrew is stolen from the Greek. Let me be clear about something with Hillman. The guy's got a chip on his shoulder the size of Mount Everest. And he's wrong. He's wrong about this. But he's not only wrong. There's something we can truly learn from him. The problem is it doesn't matter which one came first. You see, it's not A that is the important thing. He's saying, no, pay attention to A, pay attention to A. And I'm saying, like God in this parable, no, B. Hebrew came second. So what? You think that's a problem? I could wreck Hillman on this topic. And I might just do it. If he doesn't do an interview with me soon, I'm going to publish a second essay.
Oh, wow.
About how Mr. Unstoppable has got it backwards. B actually matters. We go through phases in learning. And I've learned a lot from Hillman, and he's a provocateur. And I love it. Yeah. Hit it, Chewy. Hit it. No, not that one. No, take that one down. Right? He does the same fucking thing, right? It's like, no, not that one. That's for later. He does the same thing. And he doesn't see himself doing it. And he doesn't realize, like, this is what you just said to Chewy is how you're wrong about Hebrew. Doesn't get it yet. But I'll enlighten that young man, given enough time and opportunity. It's B. It's literally, never mind. I mean, the first two letters of Bereshit are B, right? They're not think. They're not plan. They're not make a structure. They are B. A is the possibility of structure. Look at the dang letter, the capital, right? It's erect. There's nothing round in there. There's no feminine. It's very masculine. It points. It penetrates. A. When you say, you're being penetrated. And the penetration is making ripples in your soul. When you say, B, you're encompassing. Straight edge and the compass, right there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Show me a Freemason that knows this. Show me one. Bring him out. Let me talk to him. I'll talk to him. Let's go. Yeah. We'll have a conversation. So I want to read you guys briefly one of the outputs from Cryptophone. This is a mixture of Darkenville's Cat, which is an unimaginable book. I promise. There's nothing like it on Earth. And a book by Clark Ashton Smith. And I have the whole books, right, are text files. And Cryptophone is randomly picking words from these two books. And I haven't touched this, so it's not edited. I'm just going to get the pure output. And I'll read it as if I'd written it as a poem. There we go. Color the by-tapped Fletcher's end. Much he made, and bellyful immediately. Attractive was the spinaria accusation have. Just about delectable, Gerard. There, on, despite of curtains, to essential Darkenville, than sweetness, and have on which quickened rule, thought skeletons origin, Thramail, who you've Purdue's turns, mist spoil, lips wine, to well those actual, the two and less, the grey tricks continue, the opposite her or resolution, as her hall lower extend couch. Their seer tone, something be of aren't at teeth finch, shuttles tryst, who leave the or hand, he of awake one cold nature, a had right he, all of rotting, a enjoyed, nor swell, attempts circle, you flaret preference familiars, was and are, was, hid, diary, nature of its place, tracks will what blood, it opened when his sour for was gray, only Esau, within, the of in road, lunches scarlet, hippie related, was through you kissed.
Ja.